3 years ago, I reviewed the first two games of the Valkyrie profile series, Lenneth and Silmeria. These videos have been some of the most popular on the channel, with each one garnering thousands of views. At the time, I also wanted to check out the third game, Covenant of the Plume, but I didn't own it until recently, so now that I do have it, let's check it out and see how it stacks up to other entries in the series. This time around, the story does not focus on one of the Valkyries, but rather a mortal named Wilfred, who is seeking revenge against the Valkyrie Lenneth for taking his father away from him, which ended up destroying his family. He makes a pact with Hel, the Queen of Niflheim. In order to gain the power to defeat the Battle Maiden, he'll have to slay as many foes as possible and use the Destiny Plume to send his friends to her as well. This is actually a really neat idea for a story, but it kinda just gets pushed aside for a political struggle between neighboring countries. One thing that I really enjoyed about the story is that it has branching paths with different playable characters and 3 different endings. The characters in Covenant are handled in a similar fashion of Final Fantasy Tactics. New members will have a small story arc when they are guests in the party. However, once they join, they will no longer be involved with the plot, probably due to the fact that they can be killed off. The combat at first glance looks like just about every other tactical RPG you've played. 2D sprites, isometric view, grid-based movement, etc. Until you actually engage the first enemy and realize that attacks are handled the exact same way as a standard Valkyrie profile game. Each of the 4 characters in your party is assigned to a face button, and can join in on any attack as long as they are in range. This may seem a bit odd at first, but becomes quite fun once you get the hang of it. One of the main objectives of every battle is to collect Sin. No, not that one. Sin is sort of like a currency for the Queen that is earned through overkilling enemies. If you acquire enough during combat, you will be rewarded with bonus items that will help you on your quest to slay the Battle Maiden. Every story battle has a Sin quota that must be met, although you can also fulfill this quota by using the Destiny Plume on an ally. This will significantly increase your ally stats for the rest of the battle, and basically guarantee you a victory, but that party member will be lost forever afterwards. If you don't meet the Sin quota, Hel may send extremely powerful creatures at you during the next battle. Since meeting your Sin quota is so important, it's always a good idea to measure your opponents and whittle down their health until their hit points are low enough that one combo will annihilate them. Another thing you'll want to do is surround the enemy and launch a siege attack. These grant bonuses like extra damage and loot, and will make it much easier to defeat opponents. This game is just as difficult as the other 2 entries in the series, especially if you're shooting for the best ending. While I enjoy the challenge of these games, some of the fights in Covenant are just plain unfair. One fight in particular I want to mention is a rescue mission in Chapter 3. You're supposed to keep a woman alive who is in the middle of the battlefield, surrounded by enemies. Remember the Rafa mission in Final Fantasy Tactics where she would just charge right into the enemies? Well, this one is way worse since the character's AI is set to attack any enemy in range with a weak spell, which triggers a devastating counterattack. There were several times I tried this battle where the enemies pwned her on the first turn. If you're lucky, the monsters will silence her, so she won't trigger any more counters. Another flaw is that there are times when you'll have to fight multiple battles in a row. This is nothing new, as many popular tactical RPGs have done this in the past. The problem lies in the fact that you cannot save between fights. So if you die during the 3rd battle, guess what? You have to go all the way back to the first in the series. You can suspend save, but this is just a temporary file that gets deleted when you load the game. There also isn't any level grinding outside of a handful of optional battles. The graphics are pretty good for a DS title. All the battle maps look great and were nicely detailed, and I also love the character portraits during cutscenes, which were done in the same style as the first Valkyrie profile. The character sprites, on the other hand, aren't amazing, but look decent enough for a portable game. The game's music is once again composed by Motoi Sakuraba, and is both great and not so great at the same time. What I love is that there is some excellent music here, but a lot of it is just remixed and recycled from the first Valkyrie Profile game. While I enjoyed hearing some classic songs from the original game, it would have been nice if there were more brand new compositions for this entry. Covenant of the Plume is one of the shortest tactical RPGs I've ever played, clocking in at a measly 15 hours. This is a good thing though, because it makes it much easier to see all the different paths and acquire all 3 endings, especially in New Game Plus. Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume is an enjoyable but flawed tactical RPG. I had lots of fun with the game and really loved the story and combat, but the rescue missions were frustrating, and not being able to save between battles is a problem. Despite those issues, I would definitely recommend it for fans of the series or tactical RPGs. If you'd like to buy a copy, they can usually be found on eBay for $15 to $20, and many of those are still sealed. And that will wrap up the Valkyrie Profile series. What I love about this franchise is how every game is distinctly different from one another, but still retains that Valkyrie Profile feel. I usually don't collect every game in any series, as just about everyone has a mediocre title in it, but this is one that I'm happy to complete. Now there is actually one more game that's a bit of a spiritual successor called Exist Archive. While the story and characters in this one aren't quite as good as the Valkyrie Profile games, the fantastic combat is back and better than ever. If you're a fan of the series, you may want to check this one out. Although I recommend getting the PS4 version because this game appears to be just outside what the Vita can handle. And that will do it for this one. As always, I want to thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you next time.